member. This means that you've paid for membership or you're an active volunteer. How that will work is we will ask for a first and a second to affirm the motions. Please unmute yourself and say your full name along with first or second so that we can record this for the minutes. The poll will then appear on screen, and when you're ready to vote, just disregard this if you're not a member, meaning you'll not pick from any of the three options. Are there any questions about any of that?
Sorry, did you say that if we're a volunteer, we can vote?
Yes. If you're a volunteer, you're an active volunteer, you're a member of the society.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Hey, so to those of you who are joining us for the first time at an AGM, welcome. I hope that this will give you a good overview of our organization and the work that we do. Although we're almost at the end of 2023, we are formally reporting on 2022 tonight. And that's because since the pandemic, our AGM schedule got really thrown off. So given this timing, we will also be providing an update of our activities in 2023 and looking ahead to directions for 2024. And to get back on track, we are planning to have our next AGM in the spring next year, probably in May. So you'll likely see us again soon. I can't see everybody in this format, and I'm not sure who's all here, but I do know from the attendance list that we have a number of old friends and supporters with us, and I'd like to thank you all for your continued support of RJV. We were hoping to have an address from Mayor Alto. Is she here?
Yeah.
Yes, great. Thank you. Sorry, I didn't see your name on the list yet.
That's okay.
So Marianne, of course, is the mayor of Victoria. And prior to being elected mayor last year, Marianne served for many years on city council. And throughout that time has been a steadfast supporter of RJV. So I'd like to extend a very warm welcome to Mayor Alto and invite her to say a few words on behalf of the city.
Thank you very much. And calling it address, I think, is perhaps overstating the expectation. But I did want to join you, if only briefly. I'm not sure I can stay for the whole meeting, but I will certainly stay as long as I can before I go to my next event. I just wanted to say, you know, how really remarkable restorative justice is, and what a thrill it is to have the city, you know, work collegially and as a partner and a supporter with restorative justice, because, you know, the work that we do, the work that you do on our behalf and with our residents and with the folks who interact with our residents is just so incredibly important. You know, I really appreciated the fact that you started out with a territorial welcome. It's something we always do as well. And that's important to us because it indicates just one aspect of how important it is to all of us in the work that we do, that every person who is in Victoria is considered a Victorian and treated as equally as possible. That means sometimes those folks who become embroiled in the legal system need special help. And that means being able to look at the needs of each individual as an individual and being able to try and provide as much support as possible that is attuned to that individual's needs, and to try and formulate a plan that's both you know, justice oriented, but also recovery and support oriented, to make it as greatly as possible a chance for that individual to change their lives, frankly. And sometimes that's a big job. Often that's a big job. And without organizations like Restorative Justice, that would be a much more difficult job. And frankly, I'm not sure it would be altogether successful in many circumstances. So the work that you do as a group and as individuals is valued. I think actually I would say is treasured, is unique, and certainly worthy of our ongoing support, which we try and do each year, and hopefully a little bit more this year, not trying to foreshadow anything. But it's a pleasure to even take a few moments of your time. I won't take too much, just to say thank you, and to know that when the opportunity arises for us to be supportive partners, we'll be there. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Mayor Alto. We do very much appreciate your support and taking time to join us this evening. Before we move on, I would like to introduce everyone to our team and let you know about some staffing updates. First, I'd like to welcome Tasia Liu, who many of you have already met, and who is our tech expert on this Zoom. Tasia took over the role of Program and Volunteer Manager from the lovely Taryn Berger, who is also on the call today. Hi, Taryn. I'd like to thank Taryn for all her exceptional work for RJV over the years and extend a warm welcome to Tasia, Like Taryn is extremely organized and efficient at everything they do. Another major staffing change in 2023 occurred after Jillian Lindquist stepped down as executive director after more than a decade in the role to pursue a degree in counseling. Jillian still plays the key role at RJV in her capacity as associate director. So thank you so much to Jillian for her years of building up RJV's capacity and reputation. And we are the strong and respected organization today because of Jillian's dedication and vision. Jillian left very big shoes to fill, and I'm very happy to report that our very own Jack Foster has big proverbial executive director feet. Prior to their appointment as ED, Jack worked as the case manager and complex caseworker. Jack brings an enormous amount of passion and skill to the role, and we're just thrilled to have them at the helm. We're also very happy to welcome back Lane Foster as our case manager and complex caseworker after a brief stint away. And rounding out staff is Carol Larson, who's been a complex caseworker for several years. We're so very fortunate to have Carol and Lane's depth of experience and expertise as our casework continues to get more and more challenging. And finally, I'd like to acknowledge Tynan Brewer, who helped keep our systems running by providing computer support and general tech wizardry. All right, on to the business portion of the AGM. After that, we'll take a short break before welcoming our guest speaker, Angela Contreras. The first matter of business is to approve the minutes from last year's AGM. I believe everyone was sent a copy, and I think Tasha put a link in the chat, so hopefully everyone's had a chance to review. If anyone has any amendments, you can let me know now. I think Tasha mentioned we had Jack's name spelled incorrectly somewhere in there, so I'll figure that out. Okay. May I have a motion to approve the minutes? Again, if you can unmute yourself and say your name and first and second.
Janine Theobald.
Thank you, Janine. And could I have a seconder? So we need a seconder to just say
Okay,
second.
I'll second it. Alicia Jones.
Thank you. And if everyone's ready, the poll is there, so you can vote. Okay. Good. Okay, I think that's passed. Thank you. Thanks, everybody. All right, so we're going to move on to the fun part, which is the reports. So I'm going to turn this over to Associate Director Jillian Lindquist to deliver the services report.
Hello, everyone. I have a PowerPoint to share with you, so just bear with me while I get that ready. All right. Yeah. So as Aline mentioned, I will be talking with you tonight about our casework services over the 2022 calendar year, which is quite a while ago, but in some ways that's nice because most of the cases are completed. So I can tell you what the outcomes were. So in terms of new referrals, we received 71 referrals in relation to 106 offenses and harms. We worked with 70 people responsible for those offenses and harms and 44 clients who had been affected by those offenses and harms. The reason why there's a difference between what we call responsible parties and affected parties is sometimes we work on cases where there isn't a direct victim involved in the offense, but a harm has still occurred. So we work with just the responsible party. In addition to the 71 cases that we were referred that year, we still, of course, had much carryover from 2021. A lot of our cases typically run anywhere from 4 months to a year in length from beginning to end. So in addition to the 71 cases we were working on that were new referrals throughout the year, we were also wrapping up and working on many cases from 2021 during that time. All right. And then the other thing that took place in 2022 in relation to cases is that we've started to, as restorative justice has become more known in the community and more people are aware of restorative justice services, we've started to get a lot more inquiries from the public. So these are situations when somebody reaches out to us and says, you know, hey, this thing happened, a harm occurred. And I'm interested in having a restorative response in response to that event. And so as that started to increase, we decided, well, we better start tracking this because it actually does take quite a lot of resources and time and energy to support people in assessing whether or not restorative justice would be viable for their situation. And so we dealt with 32 inquiries throughout the year. 19 of those were from affected parties or victims of harm. 6 were from legal system personnel or agency personnel. 5 were support people, and 2 were people who had caused a harm. Okay, so in terms of referral sources, so these are the files that we actually accepted into our program. So these are different than the inquiries. These are the 71 cases that were referred to us officially. So in terms of where those referrals came from, the majority of them came from the Crown's office with 22. Then Saanich PD and Victoria PD made up the next sort of chunk of referrals. We did get 6 self-referrals. So these are, again, people who refer themselves to our agency. We got 4 referrals from the Oak Bay Police Department, 3 from probation, and 1 referral from victim services. In terms of the types of offenses that we dealt with, there's a lot going on here, so I'll try and explain it in a succinct way. The most common type of harm that we received referrals for were mischief. We received 31 referrals for mischief. Then the next was various forms of assault, which was 23. And I'll provide a breakdown in a second here in terms of what types of assaults those were. The next was 14 of theft under 5,000. And then everything above that was either 4 or under in terms of the number of referrals that we received per 2022. So break and enter, possessing a weapon for a dangerous purpose, uttering threats, causing a disturbance, arson, fraud under 5,000, impaired operation of a motor vehicle, stunt driving, intoxication in a public place, and then a family reparation process in response to a harm. So it's a really wide swath of events and harms that we get involved in. In terms of the assault cases that we dealt with, the most common type of assault that was referred to us was sexual assault, which was 10. Then we had 9 common assaults, 3 assault with a weapon, and 1 case of intimate partner violence. So one of the things that we track in terms of our cases is the number and types of cases that we would identify as serious and or complex. And the reason why we do that is because they take considerably more time, resources, and expertise. So some of the things that we notice with serious and complex cases, they take significantly more staff hours to complete. The restorative justice process tends to be quite a bit longer. So some of those cases can last up to a year or more. There's an increased skill level of staff and volunteers that's required. And they also require quite a bit more support of staff and volunteers working on those cases. And that includes things like vicarious trauma or just providing care to the teams that are working on those cases is really important to our organization. So in terms of cases that were referred to us that involved a serious offense, 53% of them did. And then 49% of the cases in 2022 were what we would call complex. And that is because we identify cases that are complex where there's complex dynamics or complexities in the people's lives that are really significantly impacting the case. So those might be things like mental health issues that are related to the offense or that are impacting the process, could be addiction-related issues, forms of marginalization or oppression that clients are experiencing, and complex relational dynamics that exist between the people involved in the case. So I'm going to run through some demographics. So the client, in terms of age, for affected parties, we were most commonly working with adults, 69%, and then 15% of our affected parties were youth, 11% were seniors, and 5% were children, so under the age of 12. As it relates to responsible parties, again, the most common age that we worked with was adults, and then youth, and then seniors, and I think and children. Okay, yes. And then in terms of genders, for affected parties, we were predominantly working, 51% of our clients, affected party clients, were cisgender men, 41% were cisgender women, and 8% transgender. And for responsible parties, again, most common was cisgender men, and then cisgender women and transgender making up 4%. We also track the ethnic identities of our clients. I won't go into all the details, but most commonly the people that we were working with identified as white. And then the second most common for both affected parties and responsible parties were folks who are Indigenous. In terms of client demographics, we looked at the different regions in Victoria. Most of the clients that we work with, 36% were residents of Victoria, and the second most common was 34% were residents of Saanich. And then it was a really sort of like similar percentage for the rest of the region. And on the, we had some clients who also reside on the Gulf Islands. So I'm going to next talk about case outcomes. So what happened with the cases that were referred to us in terms of their completion in the process, as well as client evaluation and feedback. So for folks who are not familiar with what our process entails from beginning to end, I'll briefly describe that. So once we get a referral, the first thing that we do is an intake and assessment, which means that we reach out to the affected party, responsible party, sometimes the referral source if we need to loop them into something, guardians, parents, other people involved in what occurred. And our goal at that point is to assess whether or not the case is appropriate for restorative justice, everybody consents to and that everybody consents to participate. Assuming that from there we move forward with the case, we move into what we call the preparation stage. In that stage, we work one-to-one with everybody involved in the offense or the harm to prepare them for the dialogue, which is the next stage of the process. Responsible parties almost always come to the dialogue unless there's some accessibility issue that we're working to navigate. Victims can participate in the dialogue if they want. Some victims or affected parties do not want to come and meet directly with the person who harmed them. And if that's the case, we have lots of other indirect or no involvement participation options for victims that we can use. At the dialogue, the agreement is developed. Then the responsible person goes on to complete the agreement in the community. And once that's done, that's when we close the file. So that's the process. So in terms, now I'll just talk about case outcomes for 2022. So of the referrals that we received, which was 71, 5 of the cases did not proceed. And so those are cases that were sent to our organization, but when we did that intake and assessment phase, either we or the clients made the decision that the file was not appropriate or wasn't a good fit for our services. So those files were sent back. Then the remaining of the cases that were referred to us did move forward to the process. So that is a total of 66. For the cases that we did not accept into our program, I just did a quick breakdown of the reasons why. One of the cases we didn't accept. We didn't feel it was appropriate for our services. In one case, the responsible party did not consent to the process. And then in 3 of the cases, the responsible party did not agree with the facts of the case to the extent that there was enough accountability taking for us to proceed with the process. So of the 66 cases that we accepted into our program, almost all of them are completed in full. So 61 of those cases have completed in full. And then there's 2 cases that are in progress, and there are 2 cases that we returned after getting the process started. And the 2 cases that are in progress, they're going to complete. They're just sort of wrapping up. The responsible people are just wrapping up their agreements at this time. So actually, maybe I'll just quickly say, just to sort of break down the stats a little bit on that, what this all means is that 97% of the files that we accepted into our program have completed and will complete once we get these two last ones wrapped up. And once these 2 are wrapped up as well, 100% of the agreements that responsible people have entered into our program will have been fulfilled. So in terms of some of the feedback that we receive from our clients, we have a 3-point evaluation system in our process where we get feedback at various points. We ask both quantitative and qualitative questions when we're doing that feedback. And so I just pulled a few quantitative stats here for you. So in terms of responsible parties, 98% of them stated that they felt listened to and heard within the process. 100% said that they would recommend restorative justice to others. 97% said the process was helpful in working towards making things right with the people that they affected. 89% said that the restorative justice process helped address the problems that were at the root of the offense or harm that they committed. 95% stated that the process left them feeling better about themselves, and 92% stated that they feel better about their future after completing the process. In terms of affected parties, when I looked at the data, 100% the outcomes for all of these pieces was 100%. We did ask like agree or fully agree. I didn't break it all down, but it was in agreement for all of these things. So 100% of the victims that we worked with stated that the impact of the harm they experienced was acknowledged and understood within the process, that they would recommend the process to others, that they believe that the process has had a positive impact on the person who caused them harm, that their need for justice was satisfied, that they believe the person who caused them the harm was held accountable within the process, and they reported feeling emotionally and physically safe within the process. So I'm just going to pull up a couple of quotes here. We have so many quotes from clients and certainly not enough time here to read them all, but I picked a quote from a victim, and I also picked from an affected party, and also one from a responsible party that I wanted to read out. So an affected party said, "I am very pleased to have been a part of this program. Sometime in early 2000, I was excited to learn RJ was in Victoria and wondered if I'd ever be able to participate in the program. My quote wish, quote unquote, came true in a way I did not anticipate. It has been an illuminating and practical way to learn about the program and also to learn a few things about myself. I feel pride that my city is doing this invaluable work, and I'm grateful for those who made it possible. I am very impressed that the offender was supported by this system enough to make full restitution. I hope they feel good about themselves and their success, and encouraged and strengthened by their efforts to succeed in all aspects of their life." And then this is a quote from a responsible party. "I have certainly benefited. Going through the restorative justice experience has put a new perspective on what is important in my life and how I want to move forward with it. Restorative justice has taught me to think harder about my decisions I've made or am going to make. It brought other options and thoughts from the community that I live in to light, where I may not have considered the impacts of others or repercussions of my actions previously." And that's it for me. Thank you so much. Thanks. Yeah, it's always wonderful to do this case report every AGM. It's like this culmination of our work, which over the year, I have to say, feels like pretty immense. And so to see it all in sort of one place and look at the outcomes and what we were able to accomplish as a community and as a group together, and with all the support we receive from, our funders and our partners, is always really feels always like a nice congratulatory thing and a real celebration of this work. So thank you so much. And I am, yes, and we can give copies of the PowerPoint out, or this will also be available online. Okay, so I am going to pass it over now to Jack to do the next report.
Thanks, Jillian. Hi, everyone. I'm just going to take a bit of time here to share on some of our themes and the projects we've been engaged with in 2022. So some of the themes that we've noticed are an increase in sexualized violence files and inquiries. We're working hard to really respond to community needs as they come in. This includes an increase in inquiries and referrals for out-of-catchment files across Canada. This is mainly happening because some communities either don't currently have an RJ program, or the one that they have in their area cannot address more complex referrals for sexualized violence. Another observation is that RJV has noticed an uptick in the last couple of years of hate crimes, as well as 2 other RJ programs that have noticed this as well, which kind of springboards me into what some of our projects are, because one of our first projects is something that's been in the works for a while. It's RJV teaming up with CJI Waterloo and Community Justice Connect in Newfoundland and Labrador. Basically, the goal is to investigate when and if restorative justice can address hate crimes and radicalization. So this project is through the Community Resilience Fund, which provides financial support to organizations working to improve Canada's understanding and capacity to prevent and counter violent extremism. Another project that we were working on in 2022 that's still ongoing is with Verapax. It's our evaluation project. So we got to team up with Angela from Verapax, and you'll be hearing from Angela in just a bit. So I'm kind of excited to hear what she has to share. This is a project that has 3 main goals. First is to do an external program evaluation by looking at client feedback surveys through 2019 to 2021. The second piece is to reimagine a new theory of change. And finally, redoing all of our internal evaluation tools based on client feedback and interviews with clients as they are wrapping up our programming. A third project that we had started in 2022 is our transformative justice healing communities, creating alternative responses to gender-based and sexualized violence. So this is a project that was first funded through the United Way Southern Vancouver Island as part of their capacity building grant. So this project was where I first got to start at RJV. I was initially contracted to design and deliver an in-house training to volunteers and staff around deepening the knowledge and practice on working with sexualized violence referrals. This grant provided us the opportunity to consult with many different folks who engage in this work in different areas of practice. We had the opportunity to consult with just some amazing local service providers and organizations. And it's still ongoing. I'll talk a little bit more about what that's turned into now. So another kind of supporter is the Victoria Foundation. They've supported various aspects of our work, including 2 projects in 2022, as well as funding for staff hours for a case manager, complex caseworker position. So they've been really instrumental in our ability to take on a lot of really exciting components to our programming. So we receive funding through the Victoria Foundation on behalf of the Gender Equity Fund, which aim was to support in developing and implementing practices to address gaps in supports for survivors. So this affords us the opportunity to deliver a second in-house training around working on sexualized violence referrals and to work on running a community of practice where we're supporting those who have gone through the training to further explore topics like trauma-informed practice, self-care, and working with both survivors and folks who've caused sexualized harm within an RJ context, as well as working on case studies to deepen each other's learning. So that's been a really exciting project that we've been has been ongoing since 2022. And the second project Victoria Foundation has funded is our JEDI project, JEDI for Justice, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion. So this project has been extended and we're just wrapping up the final pieces. Through 2022 and this past year, some of the opportunities this funding has allowed us are community consults on anti-racism, decolonization, access needs, trans inclusion. We also got the opportunity to revamp our training manual with a lens of inclusion and access. We're also funded. It's also been able to help fund our training of our newest volunteer cohort, where we got to center the learnings with just inclusion and access with our new round of caseworkers. So that's been very exciting. And we've just wrapped that piece up too. Yeah, so lots of really great things. I realize that I'm talking, my mouth is dry, so one sec. I do want to take a moment also to just share a little bit more about who I am and what our vision is for this next year. I'm a white settler on Lekwungen territory of the Songhees and Esquimalt nations. I've worked in the areas of addictions, mental health, poverty, and anti-violence for the last 18 years. I'm deeply passionate about merging anti-violence work with restorative justice work through both the lens of transformative justice models and also trauma-informed practice. I was brought on as RJV's new executive director in June this year. As I mentioned, I was initially contracted to develop that in-house training for staff and volunteers on sexualized violence. And shortly after that, I began working as a complex caseworker and a case manager. In this role, I got a good understanding of the inner workings of RJV and had an opportunity to merge my knowledge around gender-based violence and inclusion with restorative justice models. I deeply believe that restorative justice can be used effectively in creating pathways of accountability around power-based harms, such as sexualized violence and intimate partner violence. Currently, we're receiving referrals for power-based harms from Crown, and we are going to be developing structures that can better support us responding to community needs for referrals around these harms as well. Part of our vision for 2024 is to draw our focus inward. Our goal is to deepen our capacity, and part of this is focusing on service and continually updating our policies and procedures as we take on more complex cases. We are planning on having a 2-week closure in the new year that will allow us the time to go through our forms, our intake processes, and protocols to really build our internal capacity. The other major vision we're focusing on is diversifying our referral sources. So we're focusing on increasing our access points with the public. So in 2022, we developed a memorandum of understanding with Saanich Police Department. And this year, we've also started to receive referrals from federal Crown specific to some drug trafficking files. We've been getting inquiries from not only various points within the criminal legal system, but also community queries from other organizations and folks we refer to as the responsible parties and affected parties and their supporters as well. So we recognize that we do have a need for an intake role. This is because not only do we receive referrals, but we're also providing referrals and resourcing folks who are reaching out to us to external sources for those who often do inquire about our services. And so we're going to be, as Eileen mentioned, having our 2023 AGM next spring, as we have absolutely undergone a lot of changes in this past year. And I'm really excited to be able to report on those as well. But for now, maybe what I'll do is pass it over to our volunteer and program manager, Tasia.
Hi, everybody. Share my screen. Okay, so I will be presenting the volunteers report for 2022 as the program volunteer manager, taking up the torch from Taryn, who I'm very happy to see here tonight. Let's get started. So in 2022, we had a total of 86 volunteers, up from 76 in 2021. Roughly 75% of our volunteers are directly involved in casework. We saw an increase in mentors, facilitators, and community members thanks to training efforts, and a decrease in scribes. Since we've had to adapt to being online, the scribe role has been folded into other roles. So 2022 was the first year we didn't offer scribe training. Speaking of training, in March, our volunteers voted on the next advanced caseworker training topic to be on motivational language and techniques. So Carol held 2 sessions, one on holding the mirror of change, followed by a role play and Q&A session. In May and June, we recruited and trained 12 new caseworkers. This was our first year offering hybrid training, and I hear it was very successful. We covered topics including RJ theory and tensions, victim-centered practice, communication, confidentiality, self-care, boundaries, and so on. We also recruited and trained 5 volunteers to be community members, as well as surrogate victims in our RJ dialogues. In March, we had 6 volunteers listen to Christiane and Erica from Roots speak on their chapters in Colorizing Restorative Justice. And as part of our effort to offer continuous learning, we also provided confidentiality training and access to CTRI's webinar suite, especially recommending their de-escalation and vicarious trauma webinars. In June 2022, we had a barbecue and lawn bowling at Beacon Hill Lawn Bowling Club at Megan, which was followed by the Haley Award presentation. As you may know, the Haley Award is to honor our late volunteer, Haley Davies, who was diagnosed with ovarian cancer towards the end of her training in 2013 and passed in March 2015. We remember her tenacious spirit through this award, which recognizes outstanding contributions to the restorative justice community. The 2022 recipient was the amazing Elizabeth Reagan, who couldn't make it to the party at the time. So you can see on screen a picture of Jillian receiving it on her behalf. Nominations for Elizabeth noted how present she was, how adaptable and responsive to complex situations, and just that she was very enriching to work with. Building community awareness. So in an effort to reach out and make our services accessible to diverse communities, in 2022, we attended Victoria Pride and UVic Sexual Violence Awareness Week. These were great opportunities to not only provide public education on restorative justice, but also to let folks know about community referrals and how to stay connected with us, both through our newsletter signups and highlighting upcoming volunteer training opportunities. So thank you so much, especially to the volunteers who are at our AGM tonight. It is my absolute pleasure to be getting to know all of our wonderful volunteers this year. So on behalf of the team, I want to say that we could not do the work that we need to do without you. We are awed by your willingness to contribute to your communities, your passion for continuous learning, and your perseverance through the rigorous processes we know restorative justice requires. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And I look forward to updating you again on the 2023 year in the spring. And with that, I will pass it off to our treasurer, Devin.
Thanks, Tisha. Just give me a sec here to get started. I'm a little bit caught off guard. I think this is the first time I haven't been crammed into the last 5 minutes of the session here. So this is nice. I'll try not to draw it out too long, but right, hopefully I've got it up on the screen here now. So for those who don't know me, my name is Devin Arnold. I'm the treasurer for Restorative Justice Victoria. Like everybody else, I'm going to take a few minutes today to go over our financial summary for the 2022 fiscal year and some of the highlights for the current year's budget. So I've been doing these reports for a very long time now, and generally speaking, I put cute animals on the financial slides in case if you're not interested in the numbers as we go along, at least you get to look at some cute kittens this year. So again, I think Jillian and Jack covered a lot of this, but just a couple of highlights from our 2022 year from a financial perspective. This was the last year of our 3-year funding from the Allergies Power Foundation. We saw an increase in 2022 for our base funding from the BC government through the BC Gaming Grant. We received additional funding from civil forfeiture for complex case management hours, and we were approved for additional funding or approved for our funding from the District of Saanich. So overall, our funding and revenue for the year was largely as expected. It's divided into a couple of sources here. You'll see on the next slide kind of how this breaks down, but generally by our provincial and municipal ongoing funding, by our one-time funding through a number of grantors, and then additional funding that comes from training and service revenue and donation fundraising and membership dues and interest. This year, and Jack's referenced these already, we have, in 2022 and now spanning into 2023, we have ongoing project funding from United Way and the Victoria Foundation for some of those initiatives Jack spoke to. The only thing here to highlight is that I think over the last couple of years, including this year, actually, our donations are down overall. I think historically we've relied on donations to get us across the finish line, if you will. We've been working hard to kind of shift our model away from having to rely on those donations, but overall we definitely are still down a little bit, but fortunately, again, have been able to boost up our funding in other areas. As far as how our overall funding breaks down, you'll see here, I generally put this slide in every year, but just to show that our core funding makes up about 42% of our annual budget, with 56% coming from grants. Grants that we have to apply for every year. So again, just want to shout out and acknowledge the RJV staff who put in a lot of time and effort in writing these grant applications, and then the reports that go along with them. Overall, though, we're relatively stable. I took a look at last year's presentation. I think it was 54 and 44%. So this has stayed pretty consistent over the last couple of years. As far as operating expenses, these are generally in line with expectations for the year. Staffing costs were a bit lower than we initially budgeted. A couple other areas were a bit higher than budgeted. Overall, though, everything was in line with expectations, and we actually ended up with about a $2,000 surplus overall when considering our core operating expenses. As far as how those operating expenses break down, really the majority of our costs go towards our staffing expenses, and then when you combine it with the office expenses, so this is rent, utilities, internet, telephone, and whatnot, it's 93% of our budget overall. So really everything else, like the rest of it, at least from an operational perspective, this doesn't include project-specific grants, but the rest of what it takes to run our JV is about 7% of the budget. So really, year to year, we stay pretty stable. It really kind of comes down to how we're resourcing from a staff perspective. And again, this year, as you'll see from the new faces, we've changed our model a little bit with Jillian stepping into that associate director position as well. As far as our overall financial position, we're sitting with a healthy contingency fund that we use to cover our deficits in those years that we do have them. Generally speaking, I try and keep this at about 25% of our operating budget, and we're at about that mark. I think we're at about 24 and change as far as what we're looking for or looking at for the current 2023 operating budget. Usually this is used more often than not, or I think historically we've kept it in the case where we lose a funder source unexpectedly, but more recently we've used it to cover contingencies in the case where we're trying to make investment in staff, but don't necessarily have granting or funding approved for that yet, which is going to be the case for the year that we're looking at right now. So as far as the 2023 updates go, we were approved for additional funding from Civil Forfeiture and the Victoria Foundation for additional case management support. And again, as referenced earlier, and as Jack had referenced, we have project funding being used from both the United Way and Victoria Foundation for that gender-based and sexualized violence training and the JEDI work. For our 2023 budget, which is the financial year underway and almost complete now, again, the budget largely matches to what we had in 2022. The increase from about 288 to 318 is a result of largely from the district of Saanich, and then again, we've got the LRD Power Foundation funding that ran out this year. As far as expenses, again, we've got higher salary and wage costs projected this year as a result of increased staffing hours for Jillian, and then bringing in Lane as well. Overall, though, I don't think we're looking at any expenses that deviate from what we had last year. We are, however, projecting a bit of a shortfall, around $12,000 this year. Again, it's generally speaking, early on in the financial year, we have a shortfall, and as mentioned, we look to additional funding sources throughout the year to help cover that gap. This year, it's looking that we may continue to have a gap, and in about the $12,000 range. So again, we expect this to be covered through contingency, and then we'll look for the next year to a more balanced budget overall. So that's it. From my end. So again, thank you to our funders and our volunteers, individual donors and members of the community. And again, like I said before, a large part of the shout out and kudos this year, I think, goes to the staff, particularly with Jack and Tasia coming on as new staff and trying to make their way through all the ins and outs of everything we've got going on. So really just want to take a moment to acknowledge everybody and everybody's support for this year. So that's it, unless there's any questions. I like it when it's silent. Okay, Aline, I think it's back to
Okay.
you.
All right. Could someone give me my screen back? I don't know how to do it. I'm not good with the Zoom. There we go. Okay, great. Thank you so much, Devin. I just want to really give a shout out to Devin for all his hard work throughout the year and for always making the reports really clear and of course adding the animals, which I always love and I know everyone else does too. So thanks so much, Devin. Just a quick note, we had to shift our annual fundraiser from an in-person one to an online in the pandemic, and we just haven't really gone back to the in-person one. So, and we didn't do the auction this year. So look for that in the spring. We will probably try to do an online fundraiser to boost those numbers there. All right, so this is the other item we need to approve with the motion. Could I have someone please be a first to vote to approve the financial report? So again, unmute yourself and just say your name with first would be great.
Jane Osborne motions approval of this great report.
Thank you so much. And a seconder.
Lorraine Lundquist.
For second, thank you so much. And all right, so now if we can bring up the poll, if everyone can vote to either approve the minutes. So Tasha, if you could bring that up. Thank you. Hey, good. Has everyone had a chance? That's great. Thank you so much. Financial statements are approved. Great. Next, we're going to be moving on to the board nominations. But before we do so, I just wanted to have a quick shout out to one of our former board members, Robert Ball, who's in attendance tonight. And Robert is also one of the founding members of RJV. And he and his partner, Jean, have been steadfast supporters of RJV for many years. So hi to Robert and Jean. I'd also like to acknowledge and thank the board members who have stepped down this past year, Morgan Ambrose, April Legadin, Don Thiessen, and Joanne Humans. We're very grateful for the contributions and thank them for all and wish them all the best. And special thanks to Joanne, who was our board secretary for 10 years and also served as the secretary, or as, pardon me, as the chair of the Governance and Operations Committee for several years. Joanne is continuing as an active caseworker and is an overall superstar volunteer. And I'm not sure if Joanne's here tonight, but if she is, hello, and thanks, Joanne. Most of the nominees for the board are here tonight, so I will call upon each of them in turn to introduce themselves. And for those who aren't able to attend, I'll read out a short bio on their behalf. I'll start with the board executive and the positions of chair, vice chair, treasurer, and secretary. I'm putting my name forward again to stay on as chair. I have a legal background and I currently work as the legal officer at the Office of the Conflict of Interest Commissioner for British Columbia. Prior to that, I was an ombudsperson officer and worked in private practice. I've been volunteering with RJ on the board since 2005, and I've been the chair since 2010. And I would really love to stay on as chair. I love the organization and the work that we do and everyone who's involved with us. Next, for our vice chair is Allison Payne, and I think Allison is here.
I am, yes. Thank you, Aline. Allison Payne. I am a mediator and a conflict management consultant for the BC government. That's my main client. Previous to that, I was an executive in government for many years, and before that, I was a journalist for CBC Radio and TV. So you can see I'm quite old. Anyway, I've done a lot of stuff. Anyway, I have been with RJ since, 2010, I think? I always forget, 2010 or 2011, anyway, a long time. And I stayed with it because this is important work. It fills a gap in the justice system. And it's a really, really necessary piece of work. And so, yeah, I believe in this work, and I'm very happy to put my name forward for another term.
Thanks so much, Allison. And next is the incomparable Devin Arnold for treasurer. We've already heard from Devin, but here he is again.
All right, thanks, Lean. Yes, so again, standing for the treasurer role again this year. I think this makes 12 years in total for me that I've been involved in RJV, having first got brought into the fold by my now wife as a opportunity to get some accounting practice as I was looking to transition into that career. That didn't end up happening, but I've really appreciated everything involved in working with RJV over the last now more than a decade. So I work as a software development manager at the University of Victoria, but I'm happy to continue doing this work on behalf of RJV. And yeah, it may come as a super shock to everybody, but I'm a big fan of cats.
Not a shock at all. Thanks, Devin. As I mentioned, our secretary, Joanne, stepped down this year. So we have a new secretary who's putting his name forward, Jordan Sandwith. So I'll turn over to Jordan.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jordan Sandwith. I currently work with the BC Government Ministry of Education. I was involved with the Restorative Justice Governance and Operations Committee for 5 years, from 2016 to 2021. And I've been thinking about RJV since then. And so I'd like to return and support the board in whatever they're working on. I've been involved with a few other local nonprofit organizations like the Vancouver Island Nature Trail Society and Together Against Poverty Society. So I've got a bit of a sense of boards and how they work, and like to get back involved with RJV. Thanks.
Thank you, Jordan, and it's good to see you back. We have several nominees for directors at large. The first person I like to call on is Melissa Carvalho. I think she's here.
I am. Thank you.
Awesome.
My name is Melissa Carvalho. And given COVID math, I don't actually know how long it's been, maybe 18 months with RJV. But I'm excited to continue the work as it sort of keeps me connected to what my first job was out of university, which was with the government of BC, but then also Alberta and Children and Youth Services, and then in education. And today, my day job for the last 4 years has been with Global Public Affairs, which is a strategic engagement and advocacy group. And as I have become more familiar with what RJV does and continually hearing Devin's financial updates, I think there's a lot of opportunity for advocacy around sustainable funding to support the great work that we do every day.
Super. Thanks, Melissa. Next, we have a couple of newbies. I'd like to call on Ella Huber next.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, my name is Ella Huber, and I have been volunteering with RJV for about 2 years, just over, with kind of a gap in between. And yeah, I've been involved in various roles. I was first introduced to RJV when I was completing my undergraduate degree in psychology at UVic, and have enjoyed being involved in various roles. I currently work for the Center of Excellence for Women's Health as the Knowledge Exchange Lead, as well as a researcher on the various projects that we do. So yeah, thanks so much for having me, and very excited to put my name forward.
Thank you, Ella. The next candidate is Alicia Jones.
Hi, everyone. I'm Alicia Jones. A little bit about me. I work at Victoria Kool-Aid Society as the coordinator of volunteers. So I coordinate the volunteers across our 20 various shelters and transitional housing sites and health and dental clinics. Previously, I worked in housing and shelters at Our Place Society as well. I am new to Restorative Justice Victoria, but I've been following the work that you do for a long time, and it's so important, and I'm just really excited to be here and put my name forward to be a part of the great work that you do.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Tolu Kolowole is here, I believe. Tolu, are you there? I did see your name. Oh, I should
Yes,
go.
I'm here.
Oh,
Can
there
you
you
see and
are.
hear me?
Sorry.
Yes, I'm in the backseat of my friend's car. I'm just going home. I had a last minute work thing pop up, but I'm so honored and glad to be here. It's a privilege to volunteer with RJV. I've been doing this for about 3 years, I believe. I started off on the Go committee, and then I moved up to the board, and it's glad to support the good work we're doing. Like I said to someone recently, I said there's a big gap, between law and justice. And I like what we do. I like the fact that, it's reinforcing and reimagining justice in our society. And so I'm pleased to be here and also to volunteer my time again on the board this year and next year. Thank you.
Super. Thanks, Tolu. And I love that. The wonders of Zoom. So glad we could have Tolu join from the car. The next candidate is Kelsey.
Yeah, hi everyone. Thanks, Aline. Also echoing Tolu, really grateful to be here and to be able to contribute to the work of RJV. I've been on the board for a year now and volunteering as a caseworker as well. Yeah, really grateful for the work that's happening here and for the amazing staff and other board members. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you, Kelsey. The next nominee is not able to be here tonight. Her name is Eve Brickert, so I'll tell you a little bit about Eve. Eve joined RJV as a volunteer community member this year, but has been involved in restorative justice and related enterprises for many years. She's completed part of the Restorative Justice Certificate Program at Simon Fraser University and has been involved as a victim in a community-based transformative justice process. Eve has 15 years experience as a business owner and 8 years experience serving on boards, including Editors BC, Hive, Vancouver Society, and Books BC. And our last candidate, but certainly not least, is Janine.
Hello, good evening, everyone. Wonderful to see you and to be here. My name is Janine Theobald, and I joined Restorative Justice as a volunteer in 2015 and took what I can only say is world-class facilitator training for restorative justice facilitation, and have also been able to serve as a mentor. And I just was always interested and a fan of RJ. And then when I was able to witness the transformations that would take place and the healing, and I really, it has informed much of my work and time in community, and the way I've been able to show up and serve in community in other ways. The process really is the outcome, and holding that space and watching people walk that journey together has been a real honor and privilege. I have many hats I've worn. I've a history with working with the Health Authority and mental health and substance use from an administrative capacity, and also in the community through the homelessness serving sector. And most recently, I'm back with mental health recovery partners. So being able to serve as a not-for-profit in a leadership role there. So interacting with the board, and have previous board experience with the Victoria Multi-Faith Society, where I sat in the Buddhist seat, which was a cushion, but no, just kidding. Thanks, great to be here.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Janine. So those are the slated candidates that we would like to present tonight, but I'd like to invite, are there any nominations from the floor today? Hearing none. All right. So could I have a motion to approve the slate of candidates as presented?
Dan Reed, I can put that motion forward.
Awesome. Thank you, Dan. And do we have a seconder?
Chantal Ziegler, I can second.
Thank you, Chantal. Okay. Keisha, could you bring up the poll and we'll vote on that? Okay, wonderful. I think we are nominated. Thank you so much, everyone. Great. So I'd just like to send my thanks to our continuing board colleagues for all the hard work and friendship over the past year, and a big welcome to our new directors. I look forward to working with everyone in the new year. So this concludes the business portion of the AGM, and we're ahead of schedule. Like, that's the first time that's ever happened. So we will be coming back after a short break. So I think we can take 5 minutes unless Angela's not ready in 5 minutes. So Angela, are you here at the moment? Can we check in with Angela to see if she's ready in 5 minutes, or should we just come back at the scheduled time?
She does not look like she's here, Aline.
Okay.
Yeah. Thanks,
All
Mayor.
right. So I guess we'll take a break until 7:50.
Yeah,
which is when the guest speaker is coming. So thanks, everybody. We get a nice long break. Maybe grab a cup of tea or a glass of wine, and we'll see you at 10:02.
Consultant. She is the founder, director, and principal at Verapax Solutions, which has been in operation since 2008, which work with nonprofit organizations, community-based organizations in North America and Mesoamerica. She holds certificates and postgraduate studies in international justice, criminology, project management, evaluation, and educational studies. We've been working with Angela since, I guess it would be the end or somewhere in there of 2002. Angela is somebody that I had reached out to after reading a bit about her on her website and the work that she does with program evaluation, which takes storytelling and anti-colonial and decolonizing lens to understanding the outcomes and impacts that organizations are having in the community. Angela's been working with us since that time through a grant that is funded through the civil forfeiture funding system. And it's been a real pleasure to work with Angela. She has been looking at our client data over a 3-year period, interviewing clients as they leave the restorative justice process. She's engaged in one case study for a more serious offense, and is also, as Jack had mentioned earlier, sort of reimagining our theory of change based on what she's learning, which is really exciting. It's fun to hear somebody else talk about what they're hearing and seeing in terms of the impacts of our work. And we'll also be redoing and developing an entirely new evaluation system for our organization, which is a much needed and overdue change. Our system has gotten cumbersome and is outdated. And so it's really exciting to have Angela's wisdom and input and guidance in this project. And I'd like to welcome her here to speak about her findings and the work she's doing here with Restorative Justice Victoria. Welcome so much, Angela.
Thank you, Jillian. Can you hear me all? Okay.
Yes.
So thank you, Jillian, and thanks RJV for inviting me. And thank you everyone for attending tonight, this evening. So let me switch my window. That way I can make sure that I stay within the notes that I have prepared for to share with you tonight. So I want to begin with a quote from one anonymous affected party victim who volunteered to participate in the evaluation project. Restorative Justice Victoria definitely helped me to feel differently about myself. The biggest difference in those feelings is I feel like I have a greater sense of my own worthiness as a person. And that then translates into a different way of walking through the world and different expectations about how I should or how I want to be treated by others. What Restorative Justice Victoria did with me to help me feel differently about myself was, again, the meetings with my mentor. They were crucial to be able to discuss everything that was going on in my life before, during, and after the sexual assault. With their words, I want us to think about two things. One, the roots and symptoms of complex and systemic issues found in colonial, neoliberal, capitalist societies, which negatively affect the humanity in us all, but particularly that negatively affect, in a particular way, people from equity-deserving communities. And two, let's think about the purpose and goals of restorative justice. When I started working with Restorative Justice Victoria at the invitation of Jillian in the collaborative evaluation project that's back in 2022, the staff and board asked me for help at analyzing years' worth of data collected from past program participants through surveys. And they also asked me for help at gathering testimonial evidence on how RJV works. So we are seeking to not only demonstrate the value of restorative justice, but also, more specifically, the extent to what the organization RJV aligns to the principles and purpose of restorative justice. Doing a program evaluation for a registered nonprofit with a mission of delivering programs and services guided by the principles and purpose of restorative justice. Two almost equivalent quotes I often think about in my work when hearing nonprofits explain to me why they need an evaluation are, well, if it's not written, it did not happen, right? And if you can't measure it, you can manage it, nor you can improve it. Measurement, collective evidence, data, and testimonials from clients or participants are almost a religion in the for-profit business world. And in the public and nonprofit sectors, the need to evaluate is increasing and expanding, largely due to funding and sectoral requirements. You can slap a metric on almost everything you plan or execute, right? In my experience, nonprofits want to do good and address the social problems that affect people made vulnerable by mainstream society. When social purpose organizations, very much like Restorative Justice Victoria, get busy delivering their programs and services and managing their organization, it is no wonder that engaging in evaluative thinking and learning within the organization is a challenge. Metrics then become a way for them to be accountable to others. Surveys and testimonials, together with admin and management reports, do help nonprofits a big deal at telling founders, partners, potential and actual collaborators what you do, and also help you mobilize support towards your vision and mission. And that's all good. But there is more to evaluation than counting what can be counted and documenting stories of success. What is evaluation? One notable definition is provided by Michael Scriven in 1991 and later adopted by the American Evaluation Association in 2014, actually. Evaluation is a systematic process to judge or determine merit, worth, value, or significance. However, evaluation is methodologically eclectic, pluralistic, and mixed. Subsequently, not all evaluators define evaluation in the same way. Glass and Ellet once said, evaluation, more than any science, any discipline, is what people say it is. And people currently are saying it is many different things. Considering the lack of clear consensus on what evaluation is, the Canadian Evaluation Society, of which I am an active member of, offers that evaluation is a systematic assessment of the design, implementation, or results of an initiative for the purposes of learning or decision making. This definition is supported by the competencies for Canadian evaluators, the program evaluation standards, and the guidance for ethical evaluation practice. My evaluation practice exists closer to the definition by the Canadian Evaluation Society. I work with clients to design and facilitate a systematic study we can use to address their information needs. I search for information and data to adequately address the information needs of my clients. And I work with my clients on feasible responses to findings that may help with both decision-making and organizational learning. I specialize in participatory, collaborative, and empowerment approaches to evaluation for systems change. To what extent can we or should we evaluate a nonprofit provider of restorative justice programs and services? In the case of Restorative Justice Victoria, we didn't restrict the project to just analyzing a data set consisting of several years of returned service from past program participants and supplementing the findings with stories from past program participants. The project also created opportunity to revise or articulate a theory of change for Restorative Justice Victoria. In other words, the project is helping the organization at mapping what it does, how it does restorative justice, and why it does what it does. In addition, by reviewing all that against their mission and vision and the social problems restorative justice is concerned with. Here and tonight, I want to commend the staff and volunteers of Restorative Justice Victoria for all the energy and thought they had put over many years at designing service that capture the thoughts, opinions, and experiences of program participants. The existing service system helped us immensely at understanding how people from the Restorative Justice Victoria catchment area have engaged with restorative justice in past years. The service system helped us articulate a theory of change for the organization, in addition to informing an evaluation framework where the needs, expectations, and strengths of beneficiaries are at the center. Our approach. To help address the information needs of Restorative Justice Victoria, we used the evaluation criteria relevance, coherence, effectiveness, efficiency, and impact. These criteria were defined by the OECD Network on Evaluation and serve as the basis upon which evaluative judgments are made. The criteria provide an almost universal framework used to determine the merit or worth of an intervention, in this case, of Restorative Justice Victoria. In what follows, I'll share with you a bit about what findings from the project indicate about the selected evaluation criteria. Findings. Relevance. All APs and RPs who returned service reported being very satisfied with their participation in the Restorative Justice Program by Restorative Justice Victoria. However, the questions in the surveys didn't inquire about where APs and RPs were before, during, and by the end of the program. As program evaluator, I want to hear from APs, RPs, and other key participants whether the support they got from the organization did help them gain or change knowledge, attitudes, and behavior, which supposedly is what they came looking for. In the interviews we addressed the issue of how relevant the contribution of Restorative Justice Victoria was to the APs and RPs' ability to meet their needs and goals. One interesting realization when comparing surveys to interview findings is that when we ask RPs and APs about their needs and expectations from restorative justice, no two responses were alike. The results from reaching an restorative justice agreement tended to be similar for RPs who expected RJA, restorative justice, would divert their case from the criminal justice system. Nonetheless, we heard that the restorative justice process also helped participants explore their heads, their hearts, and actions in ways most didn't know they needed to explore. For example, one RP said, and I quote, "From the moment that the option of restorative justice was offered to me, I just felt immense gratitude for having this opportunity to not have a criminal record. And I had no idea what the process would be like. Walking into, I just knew that I would have an opportunity to not have a criminal record. And I was willing to do pretty much almost anything to go through that. But the process just surpassed my expectations. It was a lot of difficult. I am not used to getting in touch with my feelings. I'm not used to talking about myself and putting myself in other people's shoes. So those activities were really challenging for me, but I think they were really rewarding and very much needed. The criterion of coherence. Data from the survey indicates that the experiences by respondents align to the principles and approaches to restorative justice as described in the literature and also in the documents provided by Restorative Justice Victoria, which we reviewed. For example, one of the fundamental principles of restorative justice is that offenders' needs and competences are addressed. Justice values personal change above compliant behavior, right? So all survey respondents and interviewees describe activities and roles taken during the program, which precisely fit the processes, procedures, and structures existent at Restorative Justice Victoria. We found that the work of Restorative Justice Victoria and the experiences of survey respondents are highly coherent with what is expected from a program intended to follow the principles and values of restorative justice. One RP responsible party said, "When I am with people, now I am just more respectful. I'm a lot more aware of things like personal space, other people's feelings. It's a lot easier for me to trust people now and to trust myself. It's made my relationships so much better because of the knowledge they gave me and the information, and it is things now are just much better." Another RP responsible party offered, "I feel a lot more confident in going forward in day-to-day relationships. Whether it is family, friends, work, I feel more confident because I have more trust in myself now. And they told me I was a good person that did a bad thing, that I wasn't a bad person." As another fundamental principle of restorative justice states, the needs of victims for information, validation, vindication, restitution, testimony, safety, and support are the starting points of justice. In the words of one AP affected party or victim, they say, "My experience was so incredible. It was just exactly what I needed. and it provided me so much closure. And I know without restorative justice, I never would have gotten the genuine apology from him that I was able to get during that meeting. And I wouldn't be where I am today without Restorative Justice Victoria providing the space. And I mean the space for him to acknowledge what he had done and work through that with himself. And I think, to be honest, I think the process benefited both of us greatly. The criterion of effectiveness. From the return surveys, we primarily infer that APs and RPs achieved a sense of well-being during their participation in the program. Now, I want to note that existing surveys are designed to document or get data to demonstrate what RJ does, restorative justice does. The surveys as they are didn't enable us to explore the extent to what RJV, the organization, meets its immediate, intermediate, and long-term desired outcomes or vision. And that's why and when having a theory of change helped understand how the resources, activities, and metrics achieved helped to reach the vision of Restorative Justice Victoria. With input from staff, volunteers, and other key informants, we were able to identify indicators of the desired immediate, intermediate, and long-term change which RJV is about. The following quote from a participant points at the many, many components of restorative justice processes, and it also reveals the ripple effect of restorative justice. The effort and resources RJV, Restorative Justice Victoria, puts into a single file seems to extend beyond direct participants. The quote reads, "During the program, I had to exchange letters with my victim. RJ helped me with that. They gave me reading material which was incredibly helpful. Open and honest dialogue with friends and family about what I did also came through them. My little ones don't know yet what I did, but I have been able to change. Yes, now I am teaching my little ones about consent, and and I share that sort of thing and teachings with my friends and family. It is just so that people aren't aware of consent." Lastly, let's look at the criterion of efficiency. Efficiency. This criterion also looks into the organization's theory of change and how well the resources put into the intervention and the activities delivered to beneficiaries led to meeting the goals of the organization in time, in budget, and in scope. Efficiency refers to the availability and the use of human and financial resources to adequately undertake or support a realistic amount and types of files in a year. But we also want to document lessons learned and help with decision-making on future planning and funding development. Nonprofits can learn a big deal from doing retrospective, reflective revisions on how the programs and services have worked and how they should run. With the following quote, an AP speaks, through this quote, an AP affected party speaks about the immense value of all the time and personalized ways her mentor supported her in the RJ process by RJV. The quote reads, "I think a big part was just being flexible around our meetings and what we will talk about, and sometimes we wouldn't even talk about it at all. if I really didn't want to, if that's not what I needed. And often, because I think I just found it this easier, often we will just go for walks, and we will just go for a walk to Starbucks and get coffee, and having the flexibility to not always be in the same room all the time. Because sometimes that's a bit much like if you are relating that room to talking about it. It is actually a lot nicer to just go for a walk with someone you know. And my mentor was always like that. Some days I will just come and needed to be outside, and she will be okay, you know. And I think that was a big thing. I've never had that with I've never had that with me. I've done lots of counseling, and I have never had a counselor who's done anything like that for me. So it was unique. And it was really nice to have that flexibility to just have our meetings be whatever I want. And sometimes they will be really long. Props to my mentor for that, because it was the evening time. But sometimes we will meet for hours, and sometimes it will be really short. One more criterion, the criterion of impact. This final criterion I'm talking to you about is the contribution of the program or organization guided by the principles of restorative justice to influence desired change in beneficiaries and society. The data from return surveys indicates that, not a surprise, restorative justice contributes in desired and positive ways to RPs and APs. The surveys, however, are very limited in what they reveal about whether the benefits reported by participants extend past the moment the RJ file closed and the moment the AP or RP return to their everyday life in this colonial, neoliberal, capitalist society known as Canada. For the evaluation of Restorative Justice Victoria, we didn't want it to be all about numbers and testimonials for marketing. In the implementation of the evaluation framework for Restorative Justice Victoria, we have invited past participants and key actors to be the ones defining what they took away from their engagement with RJ. We hope that the stories and insights we hear from past participants can help inform decisions about desired or needed adaptations and modifications to the model of service or the theory of change for restorative justice Victoria. To the point of impact, I want to end my talk with two quotes from RPs. The first reads, RJ taught me to be present when I am dealing with people to make sure that I am there. These days, I am paying attention to facial expressions, body language, verbal cues, just to be present. That wasn't me before RJ. I learned to be there with that person when I'm dealing with them in any way, talking or sexual, or in any form, just to make sure I am present, fully aware of them and myself. The last quote. After RJ, I noticed a difference between my wife's feelings and emotions, and my feelings and emotions were what they were after RJ. Before RJ, I would have interpreted my neighbor's behaviors as provocations for me to use violence. But now I know that I feel different. In a recent incident with my neighbor, I gave this person the benefit of the doubt, whether he hadn't earned it or not, you know, but giving that person the benefit of the doubt, that there was definitely an influence by the support and guidance I received from Restorative Justice Victoria. In closing, to the questions, did RJV contribute to desired changes as defined in its vision statement? And to what extent the work of RJV aligns to the principles of restorative justice? I'd like to end by referring to Howard Serr. He says that RJ is like a river. Thousands of people and organizations around the globe bring their experiences and expertise to the river. This river, like all rivers, exists because it is being fed by numerous tributaries flowing in and around the world. The testimonials and data from surveys we examine suggest that Restorative Justice Victoria does restorative justice, that their direct services to APs and RPs and other key participants look and feel as an alternative or supplement to the dominant justice systems, and that the benefits reported by participants during and in months after the program align with the purpose of restorative justice. Thank you. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Angela. I think we might have a few minutes for questions if you're willing, and if anyone has a question for Angela. Okay. I think just lots of thanks, Angela. It was really especially gratifying to hear all the great responses, and yeah, very deep work that we do. And thank you so much for pulling all those things out for us and pulling it together. We look forward to working with you again in the coming year. Thanks so much. All right. Well, before we sign off for the evening, I would like to have a few more moments to acknowledge and thank all of the people who make our work possible. We're extremely appreciative of all the financial support we receive from all of our funders and donors, without which we just simply could not operate. And many thanks to our Vic PD, Oak Bay PD, and Saanich PD partners, and all the individual officers and Crown Counsel who referred cases over the past year. Thank you again to Mayor Alto for joining us tonight, and for Victoria Council's continued support, and to our other municipal partners in Esquimalt, Oak Bay, and Saanich. And most of all, I would really like to acknowledge and thank the ingenuity and diligence of our incredible volunteers and staff, whose outstanding work makes such a difference in our community, and as we've heard with our clients from Angela. Thank you, everyone who joined us tonight. Thanks for being here and taking time out of your busy schedules to stay connected and to support RJV. And we look forward to seeing you in the spring. Thanks, everybody. Good night.